Welcome to the JP8 Report. This is James Pierce with the JP8 Report. Thank y'all for tuning in. This is episode 71. You can't have it both ways. This is our first episode of 2022, or like President Biden said the other day, 2020. I don't know. I don't understand. I lost 2 years there. But welcome to 2022. This morning, matter of fact, it's January 6th. A year ago today a year ago today that the riots happened in Washington D.C. and true to form, the vice president and the president both had speeches this morning in the Capitol building. But before we get into that, I want to remind you, if you're watching me on Rumble or Podbean, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. In Rumble, you go to the upper right hand corner and you hit follow, and then Podbean, you can hit follow on it also. I'm working my way out of YouTube. I don't see it being very productive. I might just go ahead and terminate it. Matter of fact, I think I will, and stick mainly to Podbean and Rumble. Rumble's my primary. Rumble's where if you're watching me on Rumble, on Podbean, on Saturdays I usually do a live broadcast at 10 a.m. Central Time, but it's only on Rumble. So if you ever want to watch those podcasts, you need to go to Rumble and subscribe. Okay, and this Saturday on the 8th of January, I'm planning to interview a local candidate for office for the Republican nomination for Coryell County Judge. That's the mayor of the county, if you didn't know. And I'm going to ask him a few questions like I did back in December to the Republican candidate for Railroad Commission. So his name is Joey Afaji, and I've known him for a while, and I asked him if he wanted to answer a few questions on my podcast on Saturday. He said yes. So we're planning to have him unless something happens, okay? And thank y'all for tuning in for our first episode. Like I was alluding to earlier, this morning, I did not know it was going to happen, but they had a moment of silence, and then the vice president, she spoke, and the president, he spoke after that about January 6th. And just like usual, they forgive my phone ringing in the background. So Vice President spoke first, and it went downhill from there. So, wow, that's wild. Answer machine, I forgot to turn the answer machine off. So, you never know about the distractions, right, people? So, she alluded to January 6th as being just like September 11th and Pearl Harbor. Very disastrous days in our history, which it was not even an armed insurrection, which the Democrats keep saying over and over and over again. They just can't get that out of their minds. They keep saying people died on January 6th. The only person that died was that one girl, Ashley Babbitt, that was killed by a Capitol police officer, and she was unarmed also. So they keep alluding. They won't even acknowledge her being killed, but they'll say all these other ones that were killed, and they didn't. They weren't. Okay, they died afterward, and a lot of them had medical conditions. Several of them died by suicide, which is a travesty in and itself. But they keep condemning the Republicans. They stoked this. They kept it going. The vice president, she has not a clue what's going on. She lives her own let them eat cake world. She has people that keep resigning from her vice presidential staff because they say she's toxic. Why? why, and the media just buys into it that she's a queen of some sorts, and they won't challenge her on. So she was supposed to be the border czar. She went to El Paso, the most secure border site in the entire U.S. southern border. She didn't go to the Rio Grande Valley. She didn't go to Yuma. She didn't go to Tijuana. She went to El Paso for about 90 minutes and left, and has not been seen yet. I don't know. Maybe she's waiting for warmer weather. Maybe she's waiting for a stopping from the president. Maybe she's waiting. I don't know. She doesn't complete her task. She complains. She's very toxic. She has people around her. Just keeps quitting. That should tell you a sign you can't keep a stable workforce around you. The president when he spoke, he was very angry, and he kept several times in his speech. He was like yelling at the camera. I don't even know how many people were there to watch his speech. They never showed anything behind the camera. So as far as we know, he was looking at the camera and reading a teleprompter, which is what it looked like he was doing, especially with VP, because she was reciting parts of the Constitution. I don't even think she knows. I don't think she's ever read the Constitution. She might have because she was a lawyer, but she probably doesn't remember. But, he kept blaming Trump for everything. He said Trump planned it and executed it. That's why he doesn't want to talk to the nonpartisan Democrat January 6th commission. All they're trying to do is set him up. They're trying to blackball him where he can't run again. Them plus Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, the non-Republicans that are on there, they don't have no authority. They're both going to be out of office January next year, so it's only a matter of time. Kinzinger got districted out during their redistricting, and Cheney, she's going to lose in her primary when they have that. It was not a resurrection. There was no arms involved. I mean, you can't say well, they don't have to have arms because they weren't allowed to have it. In other countries, I would say yes. In the United States, we have the right to keep and bear arms, and that's to instill the tranquility of our Constitution and our form of government. So if it was that bad, why didn't the people that were protesting and rioting on the Capitol grounds have firearms with them? And they didn't. Now, I'll tell you this. President Trump did not tell the people to breach the Capitol. I watched that speech from my living room, watched it all. He told people to walk down there and protest. He did not tell no one to assault. And that needs to be well clear to everybody. Now, back to the deal about the riot. If you were involved in that riot, you need to be prosecuted. My wife is hearing everything I'm saying. She knows where I stand on it, and I know where she stands. She was an MP in the Army. If you break the law, you need to be prosecuted. You need to be prosecuted. Now, that being said, the sentences being rendered on people in that riot pales in comparison to the ones that were in Portland, Chicago, Washington, D.C. for the months prior, New York City, Austin, countless other cities, Los Angeles. And the BLM people and Antifa people over and over destroyed these cities and killed countless people throughout the summer and fall of 2020. And a lot of the vast majority of their people were just released. The DAs did not charge them. They sent them on their way. Or they cited them for a misdemeanor and slapped them on the wrist and let them go. Now, how is it these people were arrested, and some of them a lot of them been held in solitary confinement? One guy got 5 years in jail. Uh, just they weren't even armed, and you got people running the streets, assaulting people, and destroying property and rioting, and they get slapped on the wrist and told to leave. There's no comparison between the two. If these Democrats want to condemn what happened in Washington, D.C., they need to condemn what happened in Washington, D.C. At the President Trump's acceptance speech in August, when he accepted the nomination for president, and as the people that attended the speech were leaving, they were assaulted by Antifa, and they did not go to jail. They didn't. So why should we allow them to take the narrative and use it against Republicans when those Democrats are exactly the same? You hear them time and time again on the floor of the House and the floor in the Senate and all these other shows on the cable condemning Republicans about what happened, and a lot of Republicans didn't support it either. You know, most of us are hardworking people, and we go to work. But over the summer, you riot after riot after riot after riot. Kamala Harris, our Vice President of the United States, was paying people's bail in Minnesota to get them out of jail because they were being arrested. How is that fair? As a former prosecutor in the state of California, how would she trying to buy their votes out? And because technically, if you're arrested at that point, you're probably already a felon and you don't have the right to vote. So I don't know why she was doing that. I guess to make it look like she was better than the rest of the people. But you have this misnomer that was an assault on democracy, and it wasn't. They were protesting. They were executing their right to protest. They had permits to protest. And if they had those permits to protest, there should have been a planning committee on the Capitol Police and the Sergeant at Arms in the House and the Senate and the city of Washington, D.C. on a planning on what needed to be provided. Would there need to be National Guard activated? Did there need to be more Capitol Police on duty at the time to ensure the security of the Capitol building and the people outside protesting? Because, sometimes people infiltrate protests. You see it all the time, where people do bad things and use good people as cover to execute their evil plans and stuff, if you want to call it evil plans. So if we had the permits to protest, why didn't the powers that be in the Washington D.C. area plan accordingly to make sure that the area was safe and secure for everybody involved? Okay? And then in the same speech that he made this morning, and the Vice President made this morning, they wanted to start selling their voter rights package that they want to work on in a couple weeks in the Senate. It's already passed the House. What these guys want to do with voting is they want to nationalize all national elections: the President, the House, the Senate. Okay? So you can't require proof of ID to vote. Okay? You have to allow same day registration. You have to allow mail-in voting across the country. Now, in some areas they want to lower the voting age to 16, which all that stuff is unconstitutional. Because another thing they want to do is, I believe it's if you contribute $200 to a candidate, it's matched by $600 from the federal government for a campaign. So, $200 million in donations equals $800 million in donations, supplemented by the federal government for every candidate that's out there. I mean, it doesn't make sense. Okay, it lessens the amount of fundraising you do. So historically, Democrats raise more money in elections than Republicans do. So this is going to make it easier for Democrats to get even more money. And there's only so many places where you can advertise when you're campaigning. But if you can ballot harvest, you do same day registration. The concept of voting is you want to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. Okay, that's the motto we used in Texas this last summer when we reformed our election code, because all elections are state-based, not national-based. That's why we have electoral college. So the size of every state shows how many votes for president each candidate has. So easy to vote, harder to cheat. Now, the caveat onto that is, this goes back to last November, when President Trump was trying to challenge several different elections that were going on, and and nobody would listen to him, or it was taking too long. Well, when you have an election, within a certain amount of time, you have to certify that election, no matter what, and then proceed to the next level. Like even in city council elections, okay, you might have an election on November 2nd this year. Okay, so November 2nd, and then I believe they had November 13th. They certified the election. They canvassed the ballot. Okay, then they submitted it, and now for everything to be finalized. So, if something should happen on November 2nd, and you want to legally challenge the certification, it had to be challenged before the 13th and be heard and acted on. Well, if you know anything about the court system, it takes time to get your evidence together to file for a case. Because when you file for a case, the judge is going to say, what evidence do you have? Well, they're counting ballots, and sometimes they count ballots for several days, or they'll election days like November 2nd, and in some states you have like a whole week for carry-on ballots to materialize out of the mail. So you get those like within a week. So that put that'd be November 9th, right? 7 days from 12. Okay, so November 9th. And if you got to certify them by the 13th, you have 4 days. Well, if you suspect some type of impropriety going on, you have 4 days to file it and get heard and acted upon. Well, like I said, if you know anything about the court system, you'll file and you may hear something a month and a half later. That was the problem that was going on in the election. And it's not just in 2020, it's 2016, all the way back to the beginning of our country and stuff. And we've had 3 or 4 elections that were settled in the House of Representatives anyway. Okay? But that's the reason why. And then one other thing that they were talking about why were Republicans protesting the voting that happened in 2020, and they said it never happens. It's the first time it's ever happened. But in 2016, Jimmy Carter and Hillary Clinton both said that Donald Trump was an illegitimate president. Okay, and they carried on for the next 4 years until Biden took office. They never claimed that he was president. She never accepted defeat. Okay. Matter of fact, 2 months ago, she was reading her victory speech on, I think it was The View or something like that, something I'd never watch. And then in 2004, when Kerry got beat, they swore up and down that Bush illegally won that election. And back in 2000, when he beat Al Gore, anybody but Bush people were coming out. They said that he cheated. He cheated in Florida. They never. So every time a Republican wins a presidential election, they're illegitimate. But how dare you challenge a Democrat when he gets elected? You're blasphemed as an insurrectionist, terrorist, and antagonist. But Democrats do it all at the same time toward the Republicans, but Republicans aren't allowed to do it toward Democrats. Well, how about this? How about let's have the election and let it settle? That sounds like a good deal to me, because you just got to give time the court system work. Maybe we need to change a couple of laws. I heard one guy this morning, let's codify the process of the Electoral College with the role of the Vice President in the Senate and the House. But in order to do that, everybody have to get together, and the Democrats right now say it's all or nothing. So nothing's going to happen. And just so you know, if any of y'all Democrats are listening, Joe Manchin, I don't think is going to waver on his view of the filibuster. So they can play the little, well, we're going to pass this. But if him and Kristen Simica from Arizona won't waver on the filibuster, it's dead in the water. And it ain't going to happen. Okay. President Trump did make a statement this morning. He wasn't too inflammatory. That was good. But he did tell President Biden that he didn't have his facts straight, which is right. The angry old man speaking from the bully pulpit. You know, he waddled off after he got done talking for about 20 minutes, for about as long as I've been talking right now. And I think I gave more facts out than he did, and I wasn't yelling and screaming like he was. I don't know, did they write his speech on all caps on the teleprompter that he was able to read? So that's my, like I was saying, you can't have it both ways. The Democrats, they try to say it's all fair and love and war, but when the cards are up against them, the cards are up against them. And I tell you what, if they somehow challenge and win this filibuster, they will not like the end result when the Republicans get back in power. They won't, because it'll be game on. And they will not like the result, because as easily as you can codify a law, you can overturn a law. So if there's no filibuster in account and Republicans take the Senate and the House and the presidency in 2024, I can see a whole slew of laws being overturned because the dignity of the Senate wasn't intact to allow for the filibuster, and the rights of the minority were stomped all over. So that's something that they need to adhere to and remember why we have certain rules and regulations and traditions in effect in the House and the Senate. Okay. So thank y'all for tuning in today. This is James Pierce with JP8 Report. If you want to email me a statement or something or a question, you can leave comments on the podcast, or you can email me at jp8report@gmail.com. I'm on Parler. You can reach me at Parler at James Pierce JP80, I believe. Let me see here real quick. Yeah, James Pierce JP80 on Parler, and I'm on Facebook at the JP8 Report. Okay, so let me see here. We've been ongoing for 25 minutes now. So this is James Pierce with the JP8 Report. I'll catch you on the flip side, and I'm out.